Imagine if Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, and Steve Jobs had been born in Africa, or Asia, or Latin America. Do you think they would have realized their potential? Now, imagine if each one of these great innovators had a sister who was equally innovative. Do you think she would have the potential to fulfill her potential, or the ability to fulfill her potential? Secretary Clinton always says that talent is universal, but opportunity is not. And that is something that we have been working on for a long time, and I think everyone in this room in each of his or her particular way works on that too. But this morning I'm really excited to be here with you because I've been asked to talk about Hillary and about leadership. And what we know, and seeing so many leaders in the room, both men and women, thank you guys for being so supportive and being here too, appreciate that. We need you guys in this moving forward together. But what it tells us is that some leaders are born women because we see a room full of women leaders. And for me, there's nothing more exciting than to talk to you about this topic. So for example, women like Marissa Mayer, most of you know she's the CEO of Yahoo. She famously left her high perch at Google when she was pregnant with her first child. And in the first year at Yahoo, doubled the value of the company. Or Aung San Suu Kyi, to her, I guess to your right, who is the opposition leader in Myanmar, formerly Burma, and winner of the 1991 Nobel Peace Prize. She brought about a revolution to help elevate the well-being of her people after decades spent under house arrest. Or for example, Christine Lagarde, who I'm sure you recognize as the managing director of the International Monetary Fund and is often spoken about as a likely candidate for the next president of France. Or on your far right, Valerie Jarrett, senior advisor to President Obama, a former Chicago lawyer, businesswoman, and civic leader. She helped Obama win the 2008 and then the 2012 election and has remained a key advisor ever since. And then finally, of course, my own heroine, Hillary Clinton, who not only is a former US Secretary of State, but current presidential candidate, has also demonstrated that some leaders are born women. So the key question is, what differentiates these top world leaders from those who do not rise to the top? Because given that the World Economic Forum predicts that we will not achieve gender parity in leadership until 2095, that's 80 years from now, if we don't do something about the state of the art today, that's just simply not acceptable. We are leaving half the population behind. We know this world could be more successful if we engage the full talent of everyone. So we need to understand better what we can do to accelerate this progress and ensure that every woman fulfills her potential, her leadership potential. So what can we learn from these remarkable women who have made it to the top of their fields? Now, over the years, I've had the privilege and pleasure of both observing Secretary Clinton during her various life phases as a First Lady and a Senator. That's before I knew her personally. And then, of course, working with her as a presidential candidate and Secretary of State. And I began to realize why this woman was so different and what enabled her to rise to the top and lead as she always does. So today I'd like to share with you 4 things that I've learned from Hillary Clinton about leadership. So the first, because it is a lesson that those who rise to the top all do, and no matter where in the world they lead. So the first lesson is that leaders have vision. In 1995, First Lady Hillary Clinton was scheduled to address the UN World Conference in Beijing, China. A series of diplomatic incidents emerged, threatening to prevent her from attending. And yet she knew that this was her chance to speak, not just in China, but really speak to the world and to present her vision for women's rights. And she did just that. In a remarkable speech that was instantly recognized as a milestone and has become a manifesto of sorts for women's advocates all over the world, she said what no one else would, that human rights are women's rights, and women's rights are human rights once and for all. And while today, 20 years later, it seems like such a straightforward, obvious thing to say, in those days, believe it or not, that was radical. It was revolutionary. No one was saying it, and definitely no one was saying it in that kind of a venue, with that kind of attention. So with that, she set a very high bar for equality that no country in the world had achieved then, and frankly, no country in the world has yet achieved today. And that has inspired others to pursue ever since, declaring her vision boldly in front of an audience both powerful and potentially threatened by it, and then inspiring others to work on this mission as hard as she does, has demonstrated to the world what an extraordinary leader Hillary Clinton is. The second lesson is that leaders take risks. On January 20th, 2007, Hillary announced the formation of a presidential exploratory committee, saying, "I'm in, and I'm in to win." At the time, as a two-term senator, former First Lady, ex-law firm partner, and published author, she had plenty of accolades and accomplishments to her credit without having to step up to this great challenge and responsibility. Yet, as a determined leader, she was willing to take risks to promote the values and initiatives that she deemed essential to the prosperity of the American people and the world. You know, I often get asked, why does Hillary Clinton even want this job? And you know, the simple answer is that leaders lead. That is what they do. They step up when stepping up is what's required. Shortly after she announced, I joined the finance council of the campaign. And by the way, I had, as Ann had mentioned, a private sector career before. I was a corporate executive, ending my corporate career as chief marketing officer for Bank of America, at the time our largest bank in the United States, and then moved on to start my first of what became 6 businesses. I founded or co-founded 6 businesses when I lived in the San Francisco Bay Area, where I always say entrepreneurship is a disease. Even if you get rid of even if you sell your company, you never get rid of the disease, so you move on to your next venture, and that's kind of what I did. And I was lucky enough to have a number of excellent partners in that journey, and I had 5 out of 6 were successful exits. But anyway, coming back to Hillary, she was determined as a leader to take the risk to promote the values and that she deemed essential to the prosperity, not just of America, but of the world. So shortly after I announced, as I said, I joined the finance committee, never had done anything like this before. I helped both campaign, but also helped organize and host major fundraising events for her. This picture is of me was taken at the first fundraising event of the 2008 campaign. It was held at her home in Washington, D.C. And I was one of several hosts, and we had a full house. We raised almost $250,000 for the campaign. I know here in Europe and in Ireland, it's a little bit hard to imagine this because you don't actually need to raise the kinds of crazy money that we do for our campaigns. You have more of a parliamentary system. But it is what our campaigns take, unfortunately. And this was the night after the famous New Hampshire primary, which she had won, and a couple of nights after the Iowa caucuses, which she did not win. She came in 3rd. And I asked her, how are you able, I asked Hillary, to sustain your energy in the intenseness of the competition and all the media and all this? And with a smile, she answered with one word. She said, vitamins. Demonstrating the wry sense of humor that she so often shows us. Well, I told her I wanted a case of those vitamins, but what I really wanted more than anything was for this leader to step up and to become the President of the United States. This leader who was taking all kinds of risks on behalf of our country to succeed. And with each step forward that she took, she inspired each of us to do more. The third lesson is that leaders adapt. Now, you may think it's funny that I'm using this visual of Hillary with her 2 hairdos, but you know, she always jokes that if she ever wants to knock a bad news story off the front page of the New York Times, all she has to do is change her hairdo, because that's what they'll end up writing about. So, but seriously, she won over 18 million votes in the primaries in the 2008 election, though she lost out to President Obama. And that said, she did stay in the race till the end, demonstrating her tenacity, her determination, and her dedication, all of which are other key requirements for leadership. And after the primaries, even Obama had to concede, quote, "I honor her today for the valiant and historic campaign she has run." He said, "She shattered barriers on behalf of my daughters and women everywhere who now know that there are no limits to their dreams." And as we now know, this wasn't the last thing Obama would be saying about Hillary. And to her credit, she threw the full weight of her support to Obama, saying, "The way to continue our fight now to accomplish the goals for which we stand is to take our energy, our passion, our strength, and do all we can to help elect Barack Obama the next president of the United States," and demonstrating that her heart is as big as her brain. And once again, inspiring us all to move forward and adapt in the way that leaders do. It was no doubt that this gracious concession, along with Hillary's incomparable record and reputation, that led President Obama to ask her to join his cabinet as Secretary of State. And after declining twice, she accepted and went on to achieve many great things. The New York Times noted how she quickly adapted. Quote, "Even before taking office, Hillary Rodham Clinton is seeking to build a more powerful State Department with a bigger budget, high-profile special envoys to trouble spots, and an expanded role in dealing with global economic issues at a time of crisis." Fortunately for me, one of the economic issues she chose to deal with was the empowerment of women and youth through entrepreneurship. I was recruited to launch an initiative on global women's entrepreneurship and then to take over the Global Entrepreneurship Program, which we grew to almost 150 countries. The Secretary was supportive throughout. Ambassadors all over the world loved promoting what many consider to be the best part of the American brand, entrepreneurship. And for me personally, it was thrilling to have the Secretary's backing to launch many programs through public-private partnerships. Programs that have helped train, incubate, fund, and grow startups all over the world. By showing us how to adapt or pivot, to use the entrepreneur's term, Secretary Clinton inspired us all to transform economic statecraft as a major pillar of economic diplomacy. The last, but certainly not least, lesson is that leaders elevate others. At the State Department, Secretary Clinton provided leadership on dozens of issues. From nuclear non-proliferation and arms control, we signed our first START treaty with Russia in over 20 years under her leadership, to addressing world hunger. We launched a major initiative called Feed the Future, which provided not only agricultural support, distribution, whatever, to feed hundreds of millions of impoverished people around the world, to rebuilding after the Arab Spring. I just came from a board meeting where I sat with the former ambassador to Tunisia, who talked about how Hillary, after arriving in Tunisia right after the Tunisian Revolution, called from her plane to say, we have to get a massive amount of money. She named a number. I don't know that it's a public number, so I won't name the number here. But a significant amount of money to stand up this government and ensure that their future, and of course we all know that Tunisia is the one democracy that still stands in the region. So all these things she did, and many, many more. She traveled almost 1 million miles during her 4 years of service, meeting with world leaders and offering her very personal style of leadership, inspiring so many wherever she traveled. But if there's one set of issues and initiatives for which she is most known, that would have to be the empowerment of women. Throughout her time as secretary, she never lost her passion for the issue that she called the, quote, unfinished business of the 21st century, the empowerment of women. Not only did she establish the first ever ambassador at large for global women's issues, which was filled fantastically by Milan Verveer. Some of you may have heard of Ambassador Milan Verveer, a great champion herself and someone who accomplished so much while she was at the State Department, someone with another great leader, woman leader, with whom I had the pleasure of working. But she supported the efforts of every department and bureau at the State Department to mainstream a gender agenda. The book she wrote about her term as secretary, Hard Choices, has an entire chapter focused on this. And just as the people of Ireland here just voted for marriage equality, Hillary ordered that gay couples have equal benefits at the State Department, changing policies that had been in place for decades to advance equality. She said, I don't have to wait for the government to change. She was the CEO of the State Department. We have over 50,000 people that we employed around the world. So she made the difference wherever she could. And with that in mind, it won't surprise you to hear that I left the State Department shortly after she did in April of 2013 to do two things. First, to continue to promote entrepreneurship and elevate entrepreneurs globally to their fullest potential, and to elevate one presidential candidate to her fullest potential. So along with Hillary, a leader who was born a woman, I also say that I hope I will see a woman president in my lifetime. And I hope to see more women, more of you here in the audience, and more women, all of the women that we can advance ahead, not just for the sake of women, but for the sake of all of us, because we know that a more diverse leadership results in better decision-making for all of us. So I hope to see more women rise to the top of their field by creating a vision, by taking risks, by adapting, and of course, by elevating others. Thank you very much.